Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Hey y'all, I'm KC.
And I'm Tyler.
And this is the elk hunting series from the Element Podcast.
If you want to get on elk, it helps to hang with dudes that know elk.
And that ain't us, but luckily the dudes that know elk have cell phones and we called them up.
So whether you're a veteran of September or you're just cutting your ivories in the elk woods, you're going to hear something here that'll help you get the full draw this fall.
If you find this podcast helpful, poke that subscribe button and go check out our elk hunting playlist on YouTube. Now let's rock and roll. All right, guys, on the phone, we have got Drew Rouse with Real Game Calls. Drew, what's happening tonight, man?
Oh, not a lot. Just got back to the shop. I was out planting some food plots the other day. I just wanted to see if they start coming up or not.
Wait a second. This is the elk hunting series, and we're talking about food plots. How does that work?
Well, I moved from the mountains out to central Kansas just so we could do, our manufacturing would be a little bit more scalable out here.
Yeah.
Being up where I was at in the Vail Valley in Colorado, everything's so expensive.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
We just decided if we were going to make more calls, we got to do it somewhere where it's a little bit more economical to do American manufacturing. So
yeah, for sure. And you picked a great place to move to for sure. If you're a whitetail hunter, at least there's not a lot of trees out there, so I kind of wonder where you're getting all the wood to make these calls from. But
yeah. Fair enough. No, there aren't a lot of trees. I mean, in the creek bottoms, there's trees, but there's also a lot of whitetails in there. And we got a bunch of mule deer where I'm at, too. So
yeah,
you can get the either or option here with the resident archery tag.
Yeah,
so
that's cool. Did you grow up hunting mule deer up in the mountains, too?
I hunt a mule deer. I mean, I always have since I started hunting with my bow.
Yeah.
And I shot a couple with the rifle, too, but like I said, I was a skier, and in the off season up there, the mud season, you just picked up bow hunting because I'd always wanted to get into it, and it's a good spot to be at, up there in the Central Rockies.
Yeah,
to be a bow hunter. So,
you ever called in a mule deer?
Actually, I have. We make a deer call. It's like a doe bleat, but mule deer are very callable.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really vocal too. I mean, I've heard like whole herds of mule deer in the spring in the mountains shed hunting, like mewing back and forth. So
that's cool. Yeah, we've heard the bucks do their thing before, chasing does and whatnot, and it was a surprise, because we're whitetail hunters, and then we elk hunt when we get the chance, and this year's the same. But you just think about mule deer as just silent because people don't really do that much with them, but they're usually stalking or whatever, but they're deer like anything else, and like elk too, they're going to vocalize and figure out a way to get the ladies. So is that how did the elk reel? Well, let me back up. Was the elk reel what you started with?
Yeah, I started with that elk reel call. I guess my original idea was I was going to make a mouthpiece for the bugle that we were going to come out with, me and a couple of my skiing buddies, but
yeah.
It just made perfect. Even the very first prototypes made really a perfect sliding cow sound.
Yeah.
So, I invented that in like 2012 and like early August or about the middle of August. And then we took it up to my buddy's house. He lived up on top of one of the mountains around there. And I was playing with it in the driveway. We walked back in the house, and about, sitting there for 5 minutes, cow elk started coming down his driveway. So
And that was proof. R&D done.
There you
right
go.
at that point.
right off the bat, that thing, it seemed to have a really good sound. So
Yeah.
that's how I started off doing it. I started off trying to get a patent for that elk call. I used it the first season a whole bunch, and actually I ended up arrowing a monster public land over-the-counter bull, and it didn't used to fit in your mouth. So he took a step out from behind a tree, and I let the arrow go, and he spun on me, and I hit him back, and I never did find that bull. But that's the next year I made it so you could put it in your mouth and play it hands-free.
Yeah.
So,
I actually just watched that YouTube video that you put up. Was just kind of the stop 'em style, cow call or whatever. You drew your bow and kind of gave him some soft mews and stuff, and looked pretty sweet, man.
yeah.
So did it perform the same once you scaled it down?
Yeah, no, it's actually gotten better over the years. I mean, originally I just started out playing with these things in my living room, and now I made tens of thousands of them. So
Yeah.
just been an evolution of product design.
Yeah.
Trying to make it more bulletproof and make it so that it doesn't break or make funny sounds.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just put years of trying this, trying that into it.
Can you talk about, because, we're able to know what these are and what they look like, and we're looking at them on the internet and everything else, but like the listener may not know exactly what we're talking about here. This is different than your normal diaphragm call. Explain what it looks like.
It's like two pieces of wood that hinge at the back, and you can blow through it. So the diaphragm, it's actually not latex in this call. It's a nitrile diaphragm. And so it's got a little bit different sound to begin with. And it's enclosed inside the call. So as the lid opens, the reed incrementally gets bigger in size. So you go from, that high pitch to the low pitch just by letting the call open up, and you're able to control that really easy. And then you blow through, you can inflect your voice. It's very unique looking, I guess you could say.
Sure.
So
Yeah, if you're at home, Google it and you can get on their website. But if you can't have a computer in front of you, imagine like a set of false teeth is what it kind of looks like to me. But it's two plates with I guess that nitrile in the middle. Is that nitrile? Is that stretch and kind of wear out over time like latex does, or is it more durable?
it tends to be more durable because you're not, you don't spit on it as much. It doesn't go in your mouth like the latex does.
Yeah.
I've got people that have had calls for like 4 or 5 years that still play the same one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but you can replace it. It's definitely a lot easier for me to replace it, but I've got a lot of people that have figured out how to do it just by putting one in, playing it, and, kind of like fly tying. It's a good parallel to that, actually. If you can fly tie, you can take these things apart and put them back together.
Sure.
What
was it created out of the necessity, or was it created out of like a need to be able to call to elk easier because it's tough to use a diaphragm, or was it created with like the sound of a good, a good call, a good sounding call?
I think I was just never really happy with all the elk calls that you could buy. I always seen them have some kind of shortcoming to them. There'd be some thing about it that was a compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always been somebody who made things. I mean, for years and years, I fit ski boots and did all kinds of tinkering with things, and did construction. And so I started making skis and ended up owning a ski company, and I just into tinkering with things. So I just decided I could had this idea to make a diaphragm call that was a lot more controllable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it by nature easier than a diaphragm though? Like could I just put it in and pretty much start making decent noises with it?
Yeah, you sound really good right off the bat. I mean, my son's 4 and he sounds pretty good with it. So,
Yeah, a 4-year-old can make a pretty good elk call by themselves, pretty
with their
much.
voice, yeah,
With their voice.
But I mean, he plays really nice cow sounds with it.
Sure. Yeah,
but it's really user friendly. I mean, like anybody can figure it out. And if you're a good elk caller, like I've got some of the best elk hunting guides in the country that use it. And the better elk hunter you are, the more you understand their language, the more you can play the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So you grew up there in like the Central Rockies, I guess, northern.
Actually, I'm from Maryland. I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay, this makes sense. That's why you have a psycho reel.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
I was wondering why that was.
I was too. I was like, what is this? This is kind of a weird little offshoot,
So when did you move out west?
I moved out west when I was 19. I worked at a ski shop in Baltimore, which is kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
But I decided I wanted to be a professional skier and got obsessed with it and moved out west. And I did that for a long time.
Yeah. So, what did you do? Did you do downhill stuff or cross country or what?
I competed in, I did a lot of like photo shoot stuff for like Vail Resorts, skiing powder.
Yeah.
In the end, but I skied in some big mountain free skiing competitions. Like I competed in South America, in Canada, and I was never really great at it, but I was good enough to. I made the finals against like 50 of the world's best skiers in Chile.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I mean, I wasn't the best at it, but I was decent. And anyways, I just got obsessed with that when I was at a young age and just kept doing it. So I skied until I was like 37 years old. So I lived up there for 20 years and skied for almost the whole time. And I've had 4 ACL reconstructions. I've fractured my C7. So
oh gosh.
I just kind of grew out of it.
Yeah, that'll put a damper on your elk seasons, man. Golly.
Well, I started making this elk call, and that's exactly my thought in my head is like, if I keep skiing, I won't be able to elk hunt the rate I'm going. So I just kind of hung it up and had my fun and got obsessed with hunting whitetails. And
now you're in Kansas.
It's an obsession, man. So what lured you to the elk woods when you moved out there?
Well, my neighbor, we lived in this duplex, and my neighbor gave us some elk steaks. I mean, I'd always seen it on TV. Like I said, I grew up fishing, and I see like Jimmy Houston bow hunting for elk on ESPN when I was a little kid.
Yeah, dude, he's from right down the road from where we live. Yeah, it's a cool guy.
Yeah. So I remember that. I think that's who it was. Anyways, seeing him bow hunting a bull elk, and that always stuck in my head. And then when I moved up to the mountains, it was like, well, if you moved to Bermuda, you get a boat and go fishing because the fishing would be awesome. And I'm like, man, the elk, I'm in the middle of like hunting paradise. And so if I'm ever going to do it, I went out and bought a rifle, and then I took hunter's safety, and then I was like, man, archery season starts earlier, and I'd always shot bows as a kid. So I bought a bow and started hunting them.
Yeah. So this is cool because you kind of came at it kind of the way where a lot of guys do, where you don't grow up and elk hunt. Like you kind of had to, the learning curve is pretty steep, I'm sure, at some point in time.
Yeah. Unless your dad bow hunted elk. I mean, I don't know a whole lot of people whose fathers did bow hunt elk. And if they did, then they're extremely lucky because they get a jump start on it. But most guys I know started in their 20s or, late teens or something.
Mm-hmm. So have you hunted mostly OTC stuff?
Yeah. I hunted once in Unit 61 in Colorado.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I hunted like every year, tried to hunt like 30 days.
You burned all the points that you ever had while you lived there to go hunt 61, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Was it cool?
It was fun, man. I had a lot of fun up there. I had to work quite a bit during my season, which, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
I don't get paid to elk hunt. I get paid to make elk calls, but I had a lot of fun in 61, and there were some days where like the elk bugled all day long.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
It's not the trophy quality. I guess it used to be, but there's still a lot of bulls. And with all those bulls, the high bull to cow ratio, they're definitely very talkative.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, for sure.
Did you shoot one?
Yeah, I shot a 7x8.
Oh wow!
Oh my goodness,
that's a lot of points, man.
Yep. He was the biggest one I seen. I seen him in a hayfield on private, and then they were going up to bed up above there on the mountain where it was public, and seen him like 3 days before I shot him. I ended up calling him in he had broke off one of his points, and I guess he lost his cows that night, and he came in just screaming. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, he got his butt whooped that night and was wanting to take a vengeance on somebody, huh?
Oh yeah, no, he was the perfect one to have him come in just screaming his head off.
Yeah.
He was
So
pissed.
you've done that's like a lot of dream hunt, or it's a dream hunt for a lot of guys. It's 61. It's a one of the top 4, at least point requirement units in the state. And then you've done a lot of the OTC stuff too. Like, what's the big difference that you see, minus the obvious of pressure, right, between like OTC and that kind of and big draw unit like that?
I would say it was like the bull to cow ratio was really, that was something that was really obvious to me, because when there's not that many bulls, it's kind of like when you got like one Tom and he's got a whole bunch of hens, he's not going to gobble his head off.
Mm-hmm.
You get one herd bull, and every time he starts bugling, he either calls in some 5x5s, or he calls in some hunters. He's not going to bugle as much. So I thought they were a lot more vocal in that draw unit.
Yeah,
but I've seen bigger bulls in the over-the-counter units than I saw on my whole draw hunt.
Oh, which ones?
Really?
Just kidding.
Yeah. In a bunch of different units in Colorado. I mean, they're not everywhere, but if you spend enough time in the backcountry or in spots that are hard to get to, those bulls, they get smart, and you're not going to see them during the rifle seasons unless you're, still hunting them in the timber, and anyways, they do hold over because they get so much pressure.
Yeah.
They like totally go nocturnal. And
yeah, for sure. So let's approach this from 2 different ways. We'll get back to the big bull stuff in a second, but you talked about originally, like, the thing that led you to elk hunting was the meat stuff, right? You had some elk steaks at a buddy's house. So if somebody wants to kill a elk, what's the best tactic to just go kill a elk?
I mean, a cow rifle tag in a season where you're going to get fresh snow is a pretty good tactic.
Is that like 3rd, 4th season, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, probably the later, the better chance that you're going to get snow. But that's a really good way to do it if you're not, if you're new to it.
Mm-hmm.
Archery hunting's pretty good, but, I think you just got to be able to find the elk.
Yeah.
So, and that snow really helps. If you can't get them talking or whatever, at least if you're willing to walk, you just keep walking until you cut a fresh track.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the situation.
Is that why the snow helps, is to cut tracks, or are there other reasons that it helps?
Yeah, just to locate them. I mean, that's where I live. There's just endless amounts of huge timber.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to be able to glass them as readily as in other places where it's more oak brush or aspen, something that's more open terrain. So I guess it depends on the terrain that you're hunting, but if you're getting to hunt in the oak brush and the aspens and the leaves are down and you have pretty decent optics, you might not need the snow.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gotcha. So let's take that a step further. What if a guy wants to kill a bull? Do you think September is the best time to go?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be able to find them if they're bugling, so, and at least you get out there at night and hear them, trying to figure out a good spot to where they're at, or get on them before they've gotten messed with too much.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that, because I think that's something that people gloss over a lot of times and don't really understand, I guess, if you're headed out west. Like, you talked about listening to them at night. So you scouting at night for bulls?
Yeah. I mean, they'll be more liable to talk, I mean, especially like after sundown or before first light. But I mean, you get out in the dark and they're a lot more comfortable.
Yeah,
they know they're not going to call in hunters and haven't had the experience where they're bugling an hour before sunrise, and they're not going to get spooked ever. Normally, I mean, they might get some might get upwind them or something. But
what time are you heading out in the morning when you do that?
It just depends. I've done that in the evening a whole bunch of times, or gone out at 2 a.m. and drove around, just stop and listen.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you're gonna hunt them, if you're gonna hunt elk that you're picking up at night, are you, like, say if you're camping, or whatever, and you're on an active hunt, it's not just a scouting deal. Are you, setting your alarm and getting up and heading out at a certain time, or I guess is that dependent?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get in the woods an hour before daylight, and kind of hear where they're at, then you're going to be a mile ahead of. That's the hardest part about elk hunting on the over-the-counter units is finding them.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you feel like they in most over-the-counter units are elk bugling at night in most over-the-counter units?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I guess it depends on the stage of the rut. But I've had the experience that they've been more vocal, in those dark hours than they would be as soon as the sun comes up. They'd be shut up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
because I was with KC like 2017 in an over-the-counter unit. It's a very highly pressured over-the-counter unit, and we didn't hardly hear any bugling at night, day, nothing. But I was just, and this is in late September, third week kind of stuff, fourth week kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we don't get to really, I guess, draw too much on. You can't really hypothesize as much because you're not there the whole month. But, like, as a guy who's lived there, do you feel like that's the best week to be there? Or, like, what's most advantageous if you want to try to find bugling bulls?
Well, I mean, they've always tended to bugle pretty good opening and weekend.
Yeah.
Before they really get messed with, and they might not be all the big bulls doing it, but I've heard them bugling all season. It just depends on, the situation. If they get a hot cow, in with them, it might stir things up to where he just start bugling, and he's been quiet all season, or I don't know what makes him go off, but I've had, all season long a consistent amount of bugling. Just depends on the situation of the elk that you got into, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but that last week, you're probably more likely to find them all fired up and rutting, but they might be bugling real quiet. I mean, I've heard that a lot of times too, where
really?
Like, you get elk coming in, and it's just such a half-hearted bugle, and you're like, "Was that?"
Oh.
And then you end up seeing them creeping in.
Yeah.
So
I got that. I guess it was 2018. I heard elk, got on elk, and like snuck in, and then actually snuck into the herd and got on the herd bull. He was just like a big 5. He wasn't like a giant antlered bull, but just a different type body.
Sure.
And he's like at 45 yards, and he throws his head up, and I'm spotting stalking at this point. I hadn't said a word, and he just goes wee, and I guarantee you, if you're 200 yards away, you wouldn't even have heard the thing. It was weird, man. I didn't even know. Didn't know that was an option.
Well, that's pressured elk because, for whatever reason, he's decided that if he's loud, and they do that quite a bit. I've had cow elk in the summer where you're camping and you can hear them like 2 basins over. And they're just loud. And then hearing cow elk like third week of September in the same, they're still talking because they're moving through the timber or whatever they're trying to communicate. But it's quiet. It's really quiet.
Yeah.
So that opening week or so before they get messed with much, you hear some people talk about how that can be a good weekend, but then, it seems like most people want to hunt them that third week or fourth week, and like because of the fact that some places they bugle like crazy, or whatever, and so like how confident do you feel in going out? The first week and getting on and being able to call in bulls, for instance.
First week?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can call in elk the first week.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think I think Colorado season is a little later this year. When they're doing it like starting September 27th or August 27th, August 25th and stuff. Like that first week's going to be better this year anyways, but
yeah.
Even that early first week, they'll be talking.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, are cows coming into estrus in that first week, or is that just bulls being super fired up?
I think the younger bulls are going to be just cranked up anyways.
Yeah.
So, and then those older age class bulls, they might know better, and they kind of stick by themselves. But as that first week goes through, like September 3rd, 4th, 5th, those bulls are going to be wanting to get with cows. So, if you can be acting like a herd of elk, I've called in big herd bulls that have been, either a single or pairs, and that's what they're looking for. They want to find that herd. They're like, okay, all right, I heard enough of this. Let me go check it out.
So I've kind of heard this before, and I haven't really got to see it because I also hunt a really thick spot usually when we go to Colorado. So it's just kind of hard to get a vibe for the herd, But like, from what I understand, like the big bulls will kind of let the young dudes herd them up, and then they'll come in there and whip butt and steal them. But I never knew that, or at least what you just said was that those big bulls will sometimes hang out in pairs until it's time to actually go get with the herd. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we called in. It was an over-the-counter unit, and it was up at Tree Line. And this is probably maybe the second or third year that we had those elk calls. Maybe it was in the first year we had them. Me and my hunting partner were sitting up at Tree Line and just doing juvenile bull sounds and doing a whole bunch of cow sounds and, taking breaks, and hadn't seen anything all day. And we actually probably been there for like 45 minutes. We decided to eat sandwiches. And as soon as we started eating our sandwiches, 2 bulls came in like 90 yards at the bottom of the meadow and just kind of looked right at us.
Dang.
And I was just like, damn it. But they were both very big bulls for like, the over-counter unit, and they were together.
Yeah.
So
I hope that pastrami was worth it, but
well, I don't think we would have got a shot where we were sitting anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just one of those things where like probably shouldn't have set up where we set up. Maybe that's something I learned is when I started having these elk calls and they had a better sound. I mean, it is what it is. Like, I don't carry anything else anymore for a reason. It sounds really good. So you started learning that you need to set up in different places, because if you set up out in the open, and they can come in and they expect to see elk, and then they hang up. It's just like turkey hunting.
Yeah.
Like, you put your decoys out in the middle of a field, 200 yards, Tom might just sit back there and gobble at them.
Mm-hmm.
Crawl out there and take him down. He comes back out, doesn't see him, and he ends up coming in.
Yeah.
So that's something I learned, that don't set up in a small group of trees with not a whole lot of cover around you. Try and get in somewhere where they're going to have to come in there and look.
So are you doing that, like going to some thick cover like that you're expecting elk to be bedding in? Is that kind of the idea?
Well, you just want to be able to try and be in a spot where, like, if you're going to try and call them in, and you're the caller, then you want them to come into bow range.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a thick, I used to do what Will Primos would say all the time: set up somewhere thick, and that way they have to come in where they can't see you.
Yeah.
So
are you hunting with a partner almost most of the time, I guess?
I have a lot. That last hunt I did, I hunted by myself because no one, everybody was going to work up there, or they can't take off to go down to Unit 61, and they're hunting their hunt. So I ended up hunting that one just with the camera guy.
Gotcha.
And that was a lot of fun, just calling for myself the whole time.
Yeah.
Is that on YouTube?
I honestly have not put that hunt up yet. So I put up a little snippet here and there of that hunt, but I stay so busy with all the calls and stuff that I make and all the stuff that I do that I never finished editing that hunt.
Yeah.
So
No,
I'll
that's
get it up
understandable.
at some point. But yeah, I ended up shooting that bull. I think I shot him at 50 yards, and then I shot him. He came in and started walking at me. I shot him frontal in the heart, and then I stopped him again and shot him in the other shoulder, like 15 yards. It was pretty cool. But
hold on. So the first shot was at 15, or the second shot?
The first shot was at 50,
Oh.
and then he just turned and came towards us, from where he was hearing the call.
Oh, my goodness. You shot him at 50 and then got another shot at 15. It never goes that way. It always goes the other way.
Yeah, no, I shot him at 50, 30, and then stopped him at 15 and shot him in the opposite shoulder.
So there's 3 shots. Oh, my gosh, dude.
He heard, just like the sound he heard, and he just kept on coming in. I think that first shot, he probably didn't even feel it. So
what a
Whoa.
testimonial.
That's
Freaking
crazy.
Golly.
Yeah.
Dude, after hearing that, that you need to be shooting a heavy, hard-hitting arrow.
No kidding, dude. I shot them with deer last year with the day 6 broadheads and the arrows, and I'm thinking they're going to be definitely going into the elk woods with me this year.
Wait, so were you bugling him in, or were you cow calling him in?
I've made a whole bunch of elk sounds. I had come in on there was a whole herd of elk down in this little pocket, and I had gotten down and around them so I could come in, with the air falling towards us. And as I'm coming up on them, the wind changed. All those blew out the top. And so we were sitting there, and like I could hear this bull had been bugling the whole time. And, you know, I was just like, you know what? He's going to keep on bugling. I'm just going to let him keep on coming up the hill. So let him bugle, and then very sparsely cow called at him, just enough to keep him knowing exactly where we were. Probably only chirped at him like, you know, 5 or 6 times the whole time. But he just kept coming up, and I was trying to, you know, it's like when you get a tom coming in. If he's gobbling and coming in, shut up.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Do you? Are you like normally? Is that like a one of your favorite tactics? Is to like create kind of the herd dynamic in your calling, and then hope that lures a bull in?
Well, I mean, I think that's a lot of people's tactic, but it's just the more multiple you can sound, the more it's going to sound like real elk. Like, you know, they're very vocal animals. I mean, like that's something that I learned just living up there for so long. Is elk will talk, like they'll talk a lot, and people will be like, "Oh, well, you call too much." Well, elk, when they're happy and they're talking, like they call a lot.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's almost like a Eastern turkey hen. Like if you get Eastern turkey hen talking, they just won't shut up.
Yeah.
And elk could be the exact same way. So I just think sound in multiples just extremely important as far as like not sounding like the same call at the same volume over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Do you ever incorporate like the ground noise and stuff too? Like throw rocks and sticks and stuff like that? Like
kick rocks.
Yeah.
Throw things. Yeah, I mean elk are loud.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna walk through the woods, like still hunting during the rifle cow seasons, I would always call because the snow is inevitably crunchy, so you can't be quiet. You know, and so if you think about it, elk walking through the woods are not quiet. So if you just kind of walk normal and cow call softly, then they'll stand there and gawk at you. Whereas if you're not cow calling at all, they might see you and they'll be gone as soon as they see you. But they give you 3-4 seconds if you've been cow calling, because they'll be like, as long as they don't smell you.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. So
hopefully you got your gun up quick, and that's a great tactic. So
that's cool, man. So what about like, is there a difference in the way you call to just the mountains where you don't know where the elk are exactly, or as opposed to like if you've got a bull coming in or that you think is coming in, you're working him, I guess?
I mean, God, it's such a multifaceted question.
Sure.
Like, if you're just trying to blind call, you might start out trying to call quiet, you know, and then start sounding like a herd. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people like to sit in one spot, but trying to call before the sun comes up as you're moving up the hill, and you're like, you got a spot in mind where you want to finish that scenario. Like, that's a pretty good tactic that I've used a lot of times. Where it's like you're moving up a ridge, and you're going to get to the top right at dawn. And hopefully those bulls have been hearing you coming up the hill, and it sounds realistic. So you're not sitting in one spot just calling over and over and over and over again.
Right.
That's a realistic scenario, right? Like they start out low feeding and they kind of hit high.
Yeah. They'll be moving up the ridge. I mean, it just depends. A lot of times, sometimes they'll be up above tree line and they'll be moving back down at dawn, you know, but if you got a bull that you've been working, it really just depends on what kind of situation it is. I mean, if he's coming in screaming, if you can get him like a gobbler coming in and he's gobbling, then I'll quickly change tactics to trying to just, you know, I got him coming. I don't want to mess it up. Just give him enough noise now to keep him coming into into bow range.
Yeah.
So, whereas if you've got like a herd bull and you're 90 yards from him and you got cows all around him, you know, I might just start bugling my head off and then try and sound like, turn around and blow a cow sound away from him to sound like I got in between his cow and him.
Gotcha. How often do you feel like that bull will take off with his cows as opposed to coming at you?
If you gotten in close enough, you know, it just depends on what kind of bull it is too.
Yeah.
You know, if you got it in on like this one bull was about a 280 herd bull, you know, like just a 6x6, but on the over the counter unit, he's probably one of the bigger bulls on the mountain.
I'm smoking him.
Yeah. But I mean, that's just the tactic that I would change to where I might try and challenge that bull, bugling and try and pretend like I got in between him and his cows.
So how close how close do you ideally want to be before you call?
Man, I've called it elk at a million different ranges, but if you know where they are, like let's say you glassed up a herd and you're trying to get in on them, I mean, sometimes you might be better off not to call. If you can sit in the spot and you know where they're going to come through, then why give your position away?
Mm-hmm.
That ain't how you sell elk calls, dude.
I know I sell elk calls, but I mean, like, I'm here to try to help you kill an elk.
Yeah, I like it.
We appreciate
one
that.
of the best tactics is to put out trail camera at different wallows and get pictures of a bull coming in. If you do the law of averages, if you get a bull coming in once a week at that spot, and if you got the discipline to sit there all day for 7 days, you will probably kill an elk as long as the wind stays right. So
man, I would really like
a lot
to
of people
dive.
don't want to hunt like that though.
Yeah, I would really like to dive into the wallow stuff if you've got some experience with that, because I've done it just a sparse amount, and I've got the patience for it. I'm a whitetail hunter, so it's a thing I can do, but I don't quite understand it, and I guess I don't. You know how in whitetail, like there's beds and scrapes and all this stuff, and you kind of know how they use them specifically. Elk, as far as like knowing what direction they approach them and what time of day they're going to hit them and all that kind of stuff, I'm not really that sure. So can you kind of just give us a wallow hunting 101? Well,
I'll be honest with you. I don't like sitting still in the elk woods.
Yeah.
I much prefer to call them in. So while I have sat some wallows, I just know that that's a really good technique because I've talked to people that have done it, where the elk will probably come in there. I mean, I put a lot of trail cameras on wallows in the early afternoon, 3-4 o'clock. They might come in there right after dawn, but they'll hit those wallows the first part of the season. And, they really want to go in there and pee on themselves and get all stinky.
Yeah.
So, like I said, putting a trail camera there and having pictures of bulls at the wallow will give you the motivation to want to sit there as long as you're going to have to sit there, because you can sit there for a couple of days and see nothing.
Yeah. I've done that.
So
it's tough. All you see is a flock of turkeys come through. You get kind of bored. Here's the thing with wallows I don't understand is that, in the elk woods, thermals are something you're always concerned with. Well, if you're sitting on a wallow all day, then your wind is going to blow different directions all day long. So is it really advantageous to sit all day, or should you figure out like the more optimal times and go sit the wallow then? That way you're not just, winding the whole mountain.
Well, you just don't know when he's going to show up.
Yeah.
And then you have your camera sitting there and you were there, and I've had a lot of friends, he's like, well, I should have sat my wallow yesterday. I had that bull come in, but that's the most unpredictable part of it. In the evening is a pretty decent bet, but I've tracked elk through the snow that went to the wallow right after dawn lots of times, during the rifle season. So
yeah,
I mean, they were just probably drinking, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I didn't realize they wallowed that late in the season. I've never had a rifle tag for elk. I've always archery hunted. I don't know that much about it, but I figured once it got cold, they didn't really want to be swimming around too much.
Yeah, no, I mean, these elk are from Siberia originally, so they don't tend to get cold like we do. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man, they're thick hides. That's one of the things I learned when I killed my first one was that you need a knife sharpener with you whenever you go to butchering an elk. It's just like twice as thick as a football skin,
Trying to cut off the back of an elk's cape, with a dull knife is not much fun.
That's a losing proposition is what that is. It ain't going to happen. So let's talk about a day in the elk woods. Like you've talked a lot about like the morning and how to strategize for, where you want to be and whatnot. But a lot of times there's a situation where like midday, you don't hear anything and you can get kind of down and just want to take a nap for a couple hours. And sometimes that's a good option because you've been up since 4. But, like what do you do in midday to try to kill an elk?
Well, midday can be tough. Like if you know where they're bedded, then you can creep into their bedding area, and then that's a pretty effective technique. I think I've killed any elk after 9 in the morning, but I know a few people that have killed them in the bedding areas, later in the day where they were just trailing the herd. And finally when they stopped, there's, where they bedded.
Yeah.
And, you get the cows all bedded down, they're all stopped, then you can creep in close enough and, then you might be able to get that bull stirred up and get him to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you know where they're bedding?
Well, if you hunt the same spot all the time, like that's one thing that the over-the-counter guys should probably hear is like the more familiar you are with the spot, the more times you go there. If it's a decent spot and it holds elk, you'll start to learn where they go bed.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the likely bedding area is, or you'll start to figure out where you could glass some. If you're hunting a little more open terrain, if you can glass where they went and bedded, then you can get on them mid-morning and creep over there, get over close to him, wait for him to get up in the evening. But elk hunting is such a chess game. There's so many different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah. So you said a while ago that you've never killed a bull after 9 a.m.?
No, I've had really great luck in the morning. In the evening, we've called in elk before, but I would say that first part of the morning where I was at, and say for like the last 8 years I own my own business, so I found it really hard to go camp in the woods and hunt all day.
Yeah.
So I'd hunt a lot of mornings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And go to work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're just kind of employing that head up the ridge and call your way up there and try to intercept some elk up there most of the time, then, right?
We're just trying to hike into a spot in the dark, or just there's a million. Like I said, there's a million different ways to do it. They'll come downhill, they'll go uphill. It just depends on what you got, low elk or you got high elk, or just experience of living in the same spot for so long and being so obsessed with it. You start to learn where they are, and then have a number of spots that you go to.
Yeah.
And trying to find one bugling.
Yeah.
Are you one to talk?
Are you really that worried about bumping elk in the dark? Like when you're trying to hike to a spot early in the morning?
Not really. You could go walking right through them, but a lot of times, let's say you're hunting say you're hunting off the interstate somewhere where there's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
They're already going to start going towards their beds in the dark. So, you might walk in right off the road and bump them, but you're probably hiking an hour before you're getting to where they're going to be or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
are you?
I've never been much worried about bumping them in the dark as much as if they're talking before shooting light, then I know where they are. And then that's, you're either looking for elk or you're hunting them.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, most people, especially when they first start out, they're just looking for elk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know that feeling for sure.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for elk as you're walking in the dark, are you calling at all?
That really depends. Like I said, that's more of a premeditated thing where like we know elk would be up on these meadows on top of these ridges, and like we know that the elk might be down lower feeding like in the middle of the night and have moved back up. And so I'm just trying to emulate like known patterns of elk, that I've hunted before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wouldn't say I would just go out and hunt in the dark and start calling, but there's people that'll go out and locate in the dark by bugling.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Generally think if you're sitting there and you can hear them bugling and get close and never call at them, then that's, then you gotten close enough to where you then start considering on how to use your elk calls.
Yeah.
But
what happens have you ever showed up too early? You know what I mean? Like you show up, you hear some elk, you start working towards them, and you get in the mix before it's shooting light.
Actually, I haven't had that happen. Just not that I know of where we got barked at or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I've camped in the wrong spot.
Yeah. Why was that?
You can hear them bark at you in the middle of the night, and you're like, damn it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're camped in this maybe we shouldn't camp at this spot anymore, you know?
Sure.
Because I used to hunt, when I first started hunting elk, we would go like 8 or 10 miles deep and stay in the backcountry for the first week every season. And, you know, you just learn a lot about camping in the backcountry, where you're going to put your tent, because you got elk in the basin that you're hunting, and then you blow them out in the middle of the night because you put your tent in a dumb spot. Well, you probably won't do that again.
Yeah. So okay. So if you haven't gotten in the mix before with shooting light, is like, how do you obviously you're managing that pretty well. How do you make sure? I mean, are you just basically staying below them, coming up till it turns dawn, basically?
Yeah, I mean, like what I'm talking. I shot a 6x6 in an over-the-counter unit in Colorado, and we were coming up the mountain, you know. And I mean, I'm not talking about going out like 3 a.m. and calling, but like 45 minutes before shooting light, as we're hiking up the ridge, you know, stop and do a couple cow trips, you know, between me and my buddy back and forth. And then we'll move up the hill a couple 100 yards and do the same thing. And then hopefully where we think the elk are going to be is where we're getting to right at shooting light.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we called in three bulls that morning. The first one came in, I shot him, and then 2 more came in. Dang. And he didn't have a tag. So,
Oh no.
no, he was rifle hunting that year and just filming, and yeah.
Yeah, that's detrimental, man. So you're talking about, you know, hiking up and whatnot. It sounds like that's kind of the stereotypical elk unit where you've got high country, tree line, and a mountain peak, but there's some places where it's just like, you know, it might top out 9,800 or something like that. The things change a lot whenever you're hunting a unit like that. That's more like that rolling stuff with a lot of aspens and oak versus, you know, the traditional mountain area.
I still think they're more likely to go up to bed.
Yeah.
But let's say, okay, hunting in Unit 61, some of those elk will come up on top in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would work their way back down on the side of the mountain. But I think a good tip for finding them where they're going to bed is they like to bed where you don't want to pack them out of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you could look at a unit and start looking at a map and just start picking it apart by looking at it like that, like, where do I not want to pack an elk from?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There will probably be elk there during your hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's crazy is how relative that is, too. You go to one of these OTC units that's got roads all over the place. Well, people are relatively lazy. So, you know, if it's a place where there's only a few places you can get 1 mile from a road, that's where the elk are going to be because people don't go there. And you can take that and throw it in the backcountry. You know, if it's pretty common for people to walk 5 miles back in, well, those elk aren't going to be there. You know, and it's just like, it's so weird how.
Well, distance is one thing, but I think as I've elk hunted for such a long time,
yeah,
people have gotten crazy. I mean, like, everybody is nuts about going way deep in the backcountry these days.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at like what's steep and nasty, and it might be right next to the road.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's say there's a road on top of a ridge and you got to drop down a significant steep slope to get to where you think the elk are.
Mm-hmm.
That's great because most people are not going to want to go down there and then pack the elk back uphill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my favorite places to find elk is start up high and go down to where you literally have to bring them back up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've hunted steep and nasty a little bit, and sometimes in the bottom of those things, there's just not really there's not elk habitat.
Sure.
You know, and it's kind of bit me in the butt before because you're like, well, crap, you just dedicated, you know, a couple hours to do a death hike, and now there's nothing down here. But there's like these paralleling trails, you know, like elk are kind of up on the sides and stuff, but it didn't seem like they spend a lot of time there. Is that a thing?
This would be in the aspens where you got some intermingled bedding areas, you know, and then those kind of spots, I mean, they have a lot of feed in them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that's what you're looking for on a map, not so much just a death canyon, but like a spot that's tough to get to, but has like some good stuff in it.
Yeah, like it's got, you know, maybe like a couple benches about halfway down the mountain where there's a bunch of ponds and swamps and stuff, and it's good habitat for the elk. And, and if that spot's halfway in between the two access points, and that's another thing that, like you said, if you're looking at a map and you find the hardest spot to get to, well, generally people are lazy.
Generally, I'm pretty lazy about 6 months of the year, and then I have to run a lot to get ready for elk season. So, the laziness kind of changed. And I think it's a whitetailer thing. You work real hard to get in shape for elk, and then all whitetail season you sit on your butt and eat Twinkies. So it's kind of tough. How did you gain the love for whitetail hunting, man?
Man, I grew up in Maryland, and I literally was not allowed to hunt. And I had some buddies that hunted whitetails, and so I went to Wisconsin, and I started hunting mule deer with a bow. And then, you watch any hunting show, and you're like, man, you see this whitetail stuff all the time. So I was always curious about it. And then I went to Wisconsin, and we hunted for 3 weeks straight, and I only saw one buck, and I was just like, damn, this is hard.
Yeah.
And so I just fell in love with it because it was hard. At least for me, not knowing, mule deer is about, sheer willpower, perhaps, maybe some luck, but, the harder you're willing to work, the luckier you're probably going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And whitetails, it's more chess. The buck I shot here in Kansas last year, I stopped hunting all the time and just waited till it was perfect. And I'm like, well, if I'm not getting daytime pictures of bucks, I'm going to stay out of there. And then I'm going to wait until the wind's perfect. I pictures and I got good intelligence, and then I'll go sit. So I mean it's a huge learning curve to get into it, and the first couple of years I didn't do very well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I thought it was awesome.
It's cool, man. It's a lot of fun. I know what you mean about the struggle. We hunt a lot of public land in Texas, and it's the same kind of thing like you're talking about in Wisconsin, where you don't see a lot of deer, and you really, I'm not the kind of guy who likes to waste a lot of time. I can be patient, but if you don't like to waste time, you got to really put some thought into stuff, And that kind of relates back to elk hunting too. You got to figure out the game that you're hunting and figure out their tendencies and what they do, because anybody can go, bow hiking, but
and that's fun.
Yeah.
Because I did a lot of it when I started. But
yeah.
I think that's how you learn, and it's like turkey hunting. I've been turkey hunting for a long time, but when I started making turkey calls and started turkey hunting a ton, it was just the more you put into it, the more you get out of it, and almost the more fun it would get. I used to tell people that with skiing. Skiing's fun, but if you're really good at it, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm not really good at it, so I have had just minimal fun. But it is fun though. It's a cool thing. But I always tell people, there's a reason I was born where there wasn't white stuff on the ground, so it's fine. But hey, you weren't either, but you found it.
Yeah, no, I still like snow, but after 20 years up there, I'll skip it if it's an option.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. You stick to the tubes at the resorts and stuff. Huh?
Yeah, I honestly, I just don't go. I started getting a little bit frustrated because I started watching the wildlife disappear in the Vail Valley, or where I was living at, and in a lot of those resort towns where they put everything is recreation first.
Yeah,
and wildlife second, and when you start losing 75-80% of your elk, starts to be like, man, this is a real turn off to this skiing thing.
There's some studies going on. I can't remember who's doing it, of some of that stuff in the Front Range that gets so much recreational pressure, and they're starting to see some real effects of just hikers on seasonal patterns of elk and bighorns and goats and stuff, and it's kind of crazy.
Well, they need some seclusion, especially when they're calving or they're trying to spend the winter. And, if there's nowhere left for them to be left alone, then they're, elk in particular are vulnerable to that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then, you get the habitat all screwed up where you got all these big sprawling second homeowner neighborhoods crawling with mountain lions. No one can hunt in there, So one of a buddy of mine was skiing down one of the ski runs at one of the resorts up there and came across a mountain lion jaws, and there's blood everywhere. And so one of the toms that killed another one and just devoured him.
Oh gosh.
Oh man.
And that's how they got all these cats and they got all these bears. they're eating all these calves, and then the elk population plummets.
Yeah.
You know, and then they got nothing to eat.
Yeah.
So they start eating each other.
It's nuts, man. And it's kind of weird how Colorado. You know, I don't want to be too critical of anybody, but it's a shame that they've done what they have to the predator seasons and stuff. You know, because if you value wildlife, then you're going to understand that responsible take is a part of wildlife management. So,
well, I hope they start paying a little more attention to it. I mean, I noticed that the turkey season this year was the biggest turkey season that, and there was more turkey hunters in many states than there ever has been.
Yeah,
and I noticed that the Idaho sold out elk tags earlier than they ever have, non-resident over-the-counter tags, and Wyoming was up 100,000 on their applications for elk.
Mm-hmm. 100,000
up, yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it's going to get real popular because, I mean, beef's like crazy prices at the grocery store.
Yeah.
If you got a chance to go put $40 down on an elk tag, it's a pretty safe gamble.
Sign me up for a $40 elk tag for sure. But
well, if you're a Colorado resident, you can get a $44 bull tag. I think that's what it is.
Yeah,
something like that. 46.
For us, it's going to be, I think, $682 this year, $689, something like that. It's kind of nuts. But Tyler actually was a victim of that this year. He applied for a unit that last year drew at 100% for his amount of points, and he didn't get drawn. So. It was up for sure. It's kind of crazy.
Well, last year it was up. This year, I think it was up. So, it's going to get more popular. That's a good thing. Maybe they should pay more attention to it instead of blatantly mismanaging it.
Yeah.
You're
good
right,
point.
man. That is a dang good point. Are you heading out west this year?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Colorado. I've been talking to a couple of my buddies, and I mean, time willing. Last year, my daughter was born September 11th, so that kind of screwed me up.
Yeah, it's elk season.
I didn't want to be
congratulations, either way.
Yeah,
I got married November 19th, so I understand, just having family things that interrupt.
Bad planning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world, but it was terrible strategery.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this year, hopefully, you can get into it, man. We'll probably be heading up there too, and might be different area of the country. We used to try to hunt OTC if we don't get drawn away. Last year I drew a Gila tag, so that was sick, But
hunting some of those units in Colorado where there are less points. I mean, I somewhat wish that had been my strategy the whole time along.
Yeah.
Saving up all those points for all those years. I never hunted anywhere good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get the opportunity to hunt, and that's great, and it's awesome. So,
yeah, for sure, man.
Like a 1 or 2 point unit might make the difference in just having a higher bull to cow ratio, more elk talking, more bang for your buck. If you're wanting to hunt if you're coming up from Texas, put in for 2-3 years and you're gonna have a better hunt.
Yeah, for sure. On that note, if you want to leave some people with some positivity, what's a good strategy for them to find a decent unit to go hunt?
Man, I think it just depends on your fitness level. Don't get yourself in over your head. If you're a fitter guy, you might pick some of the bigger bigger terrain. But if you can hunt somewhere where it's a little bit more mellower terrain, maybe out on the western slope somewhere, and just kind of go with what your physical ability would be.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. But I mean, there's some really good units out on the western slope.
Yeah, you almost gave it away.
I don't want to say any numbers because one of my friends invariably lives in one of those units or something. So or somebody that I sold some to, but a lot of people do really well out there in the oak brush country, and where it's not maybe as big a mountains.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. Well, cool stuff, dude. If somebody wants to check out an elk reel for this season, or what do y'all call your bugle tubes? Because those are kind of cool. They're like collapsible.
Yeah, they're extendable. That's that tube.
Yeah.
I actually call it the anti-tank missile bugle.
I like it.
Take out the herd bull, but it's an awesome bite and blow bugle. You can get one of our 3D diaphragms. I have a pretty high palate in my mouth.
Yeah.
So I can play a regular diaphragm, but there's a reason I never really liked them. They just don't fit me. So I make something for somebody with a higher palate, and I'll probably transfer that technology to making some lower profile calls at some point, but I'm so busy. I've been working on a goose call. I sold more turkey calls this year than I ever have. So
Dude, the goose call's
make-
cool. What is it like? Going to be like a snow goose or something?
No, it's a Canada goose call.
Yeah.
That's all I've ever hunted. It just uses a triple nitrile reed, and it kind of looks like my elk call, but it's a lot wider. And anyways, I killed a lot of geese with it last year. It fills a pretty cool niche where, short reeds are awesome and they're really loud, but they don't get quiet and sound very realistic at least that's what I was trying to go for. So I got a call that you can get from a really soft call to, like a medium high volume with that's really accurate to geese. So
cool, dude.
Yeah.
That's fun.
What about for the whitetail guy?
For the whitetail, I make a doe bleat, and you'd have to try it on whitetail to believe how effective it is. I'm actually sold out of it. We'll probably start making some more in the middle of summer. But like I said, I get so busy with all the stuff that I make that it's almost like all I can do to keep up with.
Are you making every call by hand yourself?
We do a lot of stuff with CNC and 3D printing.
Yeah.
But all of our calls is like, I'm just trying to do something different where like everything's hand done and tuned and it's not mass produced. So, what you're getting is something that more than likely I assembled it and tested it and probably tested it twice or three times.
Oh.
And so you're getting like a really good quality product.
So your mouth has been on everything that you sell?
Well, we do rinse them off.
Good. Way to go.
Give him a quick washing.
You don't want me to test it. You wouldn't want me to send you something that doesn't sound good.
That's true.
So.
That's true. You just need to be tested for COVID too before you do.
Yeah,
I'm just playing, man.
We haven't had it. We've been pretty lucky here. We didn't have a single case of COVID in our county in Kansas, which has been kind of fortunate.
Yeah.
Because y'all haven't congregated. Probably.
That's right.
There's no one.
That's
There's no
Kansas,
one
man.
out here.
That's right. Yeah. Out of 3, 0 out of 3 is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well,
I'm
it's
just.
been a good spot to be in during this whole mess because if we had stayed in Colorado, there was no way I could have kept selling turkey calls.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, I'm glad things are going so good for you, and I hope y'all stay safe. What's y'all's website?
It's realgamecalls.com.
And that's real, like a fishing reel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a
Two
fishing reel.
E's.
Because you're bringing them in, right?
Man, that's what it does. So it's either elk reel or elk magnet because that's what it does.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Well, we appreciate the time, dude, and good luck this season.
Yeah, you guys too. Hope you guys get up there in the mountains and you guys have a good hunt. So.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate it, man. We'll holler at you later, dude. Now that was some killer info. Don't forget to subscribe, and a 5-star review means a ton to us.
Remember, this is your element.
Living it.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like them. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.